SCORE Northeast Wisconsin and WHBY are pleased to bring you Biz Talk, a chance for you to hear from entrepreneurs and professionals as they share their experiences. From starting to sustaining growth, learn the skills needed for your business to be successful. If you miss anything, you can catch the Biz Talk podcast at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And now from the Myron Construction Studio, it's Biz Talk on WHBY.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Biz Talk with SCORE. We're glad you joined us this week. Before we kick off the show, I just want to mention again that we are doing a financial literacy month here in Biz Talk with SCORE, and this week's guest fits in perfectly with that. They are not only experts on the investing side, but they are also sponsors of Biz Talk with SCORE and the SCORE chapter, and we really are appreciative of all they've done for us and looking forward to talk to them today. So before we'll get back to our guests, I just want to introduce co-host this week, and it's John Drangler. John, welcome.
Hey, how you doing, Terry? Good morning.
Excellent. Yourself?
Good. Springtime. Snow's melted. Golfing will resume shortly.
I was watching the Masters just before we signed on. So that's always the start of spring. Okay. So our guests this week are Kevin and Robb Geenen from the Geenen Group at Baird. And again, I mentioned that they're sponsors. But Kevin and Robb, first, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right. So as we get started, Kevin, could you talk a little bit about your background and how you got to the place you are today?
Yeah. So my name's Kevin Geenen, 38 years old, born and raised in Kaukauna. I live in Freedom now with my wife, Kelly. Been married for about 8 years now. I have 3 daughters, 3, 5, and almost 7 now. And, that's kind of changed the game for me having kids, moving into this financial discussion. It's kind of reshaped the way I look at things, like planning ahead and just kind of building stability and things like that for the future. So my career path wasn't necessarily a straight line like, you see some others. Right out of high school, I worked as a chemical tech for a chemical company, monitoring chemical pumps and stuff like that. Did that for a couple years. And then I moved into the trades where I spent some time working towards being an electrician. Did that for a couple years. And, after that, I kind of moved on, just wanting to work a little bit more closely with people. So I decided to go back to school, to college, my early 20s. And I think that gave me a little bit of a different level of focus, compared to some of these other college kids that are just kind of going through the motions. I had kind of a better idea why I wanted to, pursue that, I guess. And so after I finished school, had a couple sales jobs. But I would say probably the most impactful was for a home improvement company where I help customers with window and door projects, and I actually helped them obtain financing for those projects. And so that was a pretty rewarding thing to see, just small change in just their home and stuff like that was making a big impact on these people's lives. And so that was probably a big contributor to kind of moving in this direction. But Robb was also kind of an influence early on. I kind of saw how, early on he was always kind of in the know and, talking to a lot of people every day, as you guys know we do. And so I just kind of thought that was kind of cool that he was always just kind of at the center of, all the information. So that was kind of admirable. So basically leads us into today. I've been with Baird for about 8 years. The company's been great. The people I work with are awesome, but the clients are what, really make it a rewarding place to be.
Great. And Robb, let's turn to you. Talk about your career journey.
I started out, I was a traditional guy. I went to college right out of high school, St. Norbert, and got a degree in. I started with Wisconsin Tissue Mills. That's how I met Mr. Drangler. And I did that inside sales, customer service for about 7 or 8 years. And one of my friends was in this business. And he noticed the long hours I was working and stuff. Said, "That's crazy." He said, and we got talking about it, and he said, "Boy, I got a job opening right now where I work." And I interviewed, and that was 36 years ago or 37 years ago, and been doing it ever since, and absolutely love it.
Great. So, Kevin, could you tell us about Baird and some of the services you offer?
Yeah, so I would say, primarily we're investment managers, obviously, but we also do a lot of comprehensive financial planning. So I would say at our core, the comprehensive financial planning piece is obviously a big part of it, but also, portfolio construction, investment management, like I said earlier. But we also do a lot of different stuff with retirement income strategies, Social Security planning, IRA and Roth IRA planning. You hear that buzz phrase, Roth conversions a lot lately. So we help clients kind of, figure out if that makes sense. We do a lot with insurance and risk management and that kind of thing. But we also work with a lot of people, CPAs and attorneys to come up with, estate planning, strategies and tax efficient planning strategies, for clients as well. So, that at our core, that's probably what I would say we do most of. But, we also do things like education savings and, that sort of thing. So we do a lot, but I would say at the core, financial planning, and investment management and retirement income is definitely a big part of it.
Also, I'd like to add that we do a fair amount of client education. We do a fair amount of 401k plans, and a lot of the participants need education. And that's Kevin. Actually, Kevin does almost all of that now. But he sits down with the participants of 401k plans and says, okay, what are your goals? What are you thinking? How much can you afford to put away? And we do educational pieces and stuff for them, and spend a lot of one-on-one time, getting their financial literacy up to date so they can, have a decent retirement.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, as part of that and that getting those plans together, over the years, the mix of doing it for individual investors or corporate or company investors, what's kind of the mix of your clients that way?
I would say probably about, maybe a quarter of our business is, 401k plans, that sort of thing. And then the rest is, others. But we do a fair amount of the 401k plan and that sort of thing. And again, we do a lot of individual stuff also, of course. But, probably a quarter, three-quarter, I would guess, somewhere in that vicinity.
How does your messaging differ when you're dealing with a company and trying to educate employee groups through their HR departments, for example, of the benefits of setting money aside for 401ks? It's a kind of a different tact in education, isn't it, versus individual investors?
It is. But, sometimes the company has different goals, of course, but, we stress this all the time. The number one way that most people are going to accumulate any wealth for retirement is in their 401k plans, their company work plans. So we've got a place in Milwaukee called Baird University. And Baird keeps a cache of tons of articles and case studies, and that we pass out. If you put X amount of dollars away, here's how much you should have at retirement, or here's how much we think you should have, and that sort of thing. And we have a lot of educational pieces, for Milwaukee, for that area, for the 401ks and that sort of thing.
Rob, when I go back 40 years and I was going from community college to university, I had looked at becoming an investment bank or broker. And what I found was they were very focused on one thing, buying and selling stocks. Now, when I look at what you're doing, it's very comprehensive. It covers all parts of a plan if that's what a person is looking for. How did you manage that transition over time from maybe being more specific to really providing the financial advice people need?
You know what? That's a really good question. We used to be stockbrokers. Nobody calls us stockbrokers except old guys like me and you in the business. But that's what we used to be called, stockbrokers. And we call up people and pitch stocks. And it was a high commission thing. And about 25 years ago, we started going towards, we're not going to do it trade by trade. We want to manage all your money and do what's right for you, and and put it in different buckets. And we charge a yearly fee for doing that. And all comprehensive, for instance, let's say 1%. So we manage your money, we charge you 1% a year to manage it. And then you don't got the pressure of people calling you with commission breath, as we used to say. They always want to get paid, so they're calling you. No, we don't do it like that anymore. So we do the full comprehensive retirement planning, financial planners, that sort of thing. And I think it's a lot better deal for the clients and a lot better deal for us.
And so as you're working, Kevin mentioned it earlier too, but you are talking to their CPAs and other legal and other advisors too, as you pull it into one plan?
Yes, we talked. Matter of fact, I was on the phone this morning because it's tax time with 3 tax people, 3 CPAs, but we like to deal with the attorneys, the tax attorneys and estate planning attorneys and the CPAs, so we can kind of give somebody a full picture. And again, Baird, we have our own CPAs on staff and our own attorneys on staff we can consult with also. So, that's part of that management fee we charge you. That includes all those services, tax planning, some estate planning issues, that sort of thing.
Well, and by the way, we also like to work with guys like that, what we consider center of influence, because it helps us get future business too, building relationships with a lot of these CPAs and attorneys, they work with us for a few years and then they end up referring other business to us. So it kind of comes full circle that way too.
Well, Kevin, following up at that, as you look at how you build this business, and is it a lot of networking and personal touch that really builds the business?
Yeah, it's definitely a people business for sure. Like, I belong to a couple different networking groups. One of them comes to mind. It's every weekend, they hook up 2 of us through email. It's just a one-on-one type of thing. And then they leave it up to you to, kind of connect and, meet over coffee and stuff like that. So I've been doing that for a few years. We also sponsor a lot of events and things like that. And that kind of helps get our name out there. So yeah, it's definitely, a lot with, marketing and stuff like that to get your name out there, to get, prospects in the door and try to get them to be clients then.
In the old day, we cold called, but they don't, that of course, with the do not call list and stuff, and probably because of guys like me, that's why they had a do not call list, because they don't want people bothering you. But that's what we used to. But now, you know what? I used to do this a lot. On the way home, I'd drive past, let's say, Little Chute High School. I live in Little Chute, and if there's a bunch of cars there, I just pop in 5 o'clock and always run into somebody in the stands I knew, and I'd sit with them, and we get talking. Hey, I see your kid out there, da-da-da. And if you're in the business, everybody wants to talk about their stocks or their finances. So I was surprised so many people, hey, geez, Rob, what's going on in the markets? Hey, what do you got for me? And I put a shocking amount of business just by kind of hanging around and being seen out in the community.
Yeah, you got to get out there and play in traffic in order to be successful.
Yeah,
you just have to. You got to be out there all the time.
And that's a message that we send to SCORE clients all the time, is networking is one of the most important things you can do. You need to understand your finances. That's very critical. But if you don't network, you're really losing a lot of opportunity. People think Facebook and social media is the way to go. It's important. You need to do it. But that networking piece is what really, really can make a difference for somebody.
Oh, absolutely.
Face-to-face I'm still an old-time face-to-face guy. Email stuff's okay, but I really like, most of my meetings are face-to-face yet with people. I like to get in and talk to them face-to-face, and, I think that's very important. Most of my clients become my friends.
But that's kind of a really good thing for people in Northeast Wisconsin to reflect on, because we're smaller communities, and it is something that is a way to drive business. So we really appreciate those comments. So we are going to take our first break. You're listening to Biz Talk with SCORE and WHBY. I hope you are having a great Saturday morning, and we'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back. We're glad you joined us this morning for Biz Talk with SCORE. Our guests are Robb and Kevin Geenen from the Geenen Group at Baird. Before continuing our conversation with Robb and Kevin, I'd like to tell you a little bit about SCORE Northeast Wisconsin. SCORE serves 29 county area, primarily in Northeast and West Central Wisconsin. We have over 30 volunteers, and each is an expert in their field, offering entrepreneurs no cost and confidential mentoring. The areas of expertise are IT, social media, marketing, cash flow, accounting, strategic planning, workflow, retail, best practices, and many, many other areas. In order to register for a no-cost confidential mentoring session or to learn more about SCORE Northeast Wisconsin, please visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. There you can learn more about how the SCORE chapter can assist you in your growing business, whether it's starting out or you're in those first few years looking to add on, we can help you out by just having you complete an application. And right after that, we'll get back to you and set up a mentoring session. Remember, SCORE is no cost to you and offers experts who can give you assistance in many different areas of your business. Again, to get started, please visit our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin. And if you're interested in helping owners succeed in business, well, SCORE is always looking for new mentors and subject matter experts. If you have expertise that you'd like to share with others, we'd love to talk to you. We welcome volunteers with experience in all aspects of business, and small business owners really need your help and your expertise, and it can make a big difference in their success. So again, go to score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, click on the volunteer button and fill out a short application. We'll get back to you soon to explain more. And again, thanks for joining us this morning on Biz Talk, and back to our conversation with Robb and Kevin. Kevin, we were talking before the break about networking and its importance. You and Robb both talked about also that you sponsor events in the community. Can you tell us a little bit about some of those and how Baird and the Geenen Group gets engaged in the Fox Valley?
Yeah, for sure, John. So, as far as the marketing piece goes, I wouldn't necessarily say that this, would be marketing based. It's more for the good of the community, but it also does help get our name out there. We do different things in partnering with like Feeding America. We've done that before, portioning meals out and, getting those to families in need in the area. We also, just the last, I think 2 years ago or so, we got a list from the county with, disabled people and elderly people in the community. And we got together and did some yard cleanup and just general yard, work, for those people. But we do tons of stuff like that. United Way, Toys for Tots drive is a big one too. And actually, I've got a banquet coming up that we're sponsoring for the Kimberly Recreation Association. That's at Tanner's on the 25th. So, all these things kind of circle back to the marketing piece and just kind of getting your name out there and, making the community aware that, you're out here to help them.
Sure. So how has it been, the fact that, Robb, you started this business a long time ago, and Kevin, now you're in it. How is the dynamic in terms of your team in the Geenen Group? I know you've got some assistant people as well that help your clients a lot. Talk about the dynamics of how you guys kind of split the workload and how you take care of your clients.
Because I'm the senior guy, so I used to do all the, a lot of the heavy lifting things. But the good news now is these young guys like Kevin are so much better navigating the computer and that sort of thing than I ever was. And so Kevin does a lot of the financial planning, the retirement income planning. I still do kind of the bulk of the big investment decisions so far yet. Kevin's doing more and more of that, but I'm more on the investment side. He's more into planning, income, a lot of the administrative things, even though, he does a fair amount of the other stuff too. But I've been kind of laying that stuff off on him because a lot of that's on the computer, and this young generation's much more adept at that sort of thing than I certainly was or am.
So hand in hand with that, do you find that your clients of the younger generation have different needs than maybe you talked about in the early, when you were starting out in the stockbroker days, Robb? What are the expectations of some of the younger generations on their financial investing and security?
Tell you what, the best thing, believe it or not, just a step back from that, the best thing that ever happened to financial people like me is getting rid of pensions. It's bad for everybody else, but it was really good for us because what they did is most companies got rid of pensions and they gave it to the employees in a 401k plan. And most people have no financial literacy, so they don't know what to do with it. So they need to come to somebody like Kevin or me and say, okay, you know what? My dad just got a pension when he, for the rest of his life. They gave him X amount of dollars. He didn't have to worry about it. Well, now, when you're 25 or 30, you better start thinking about this because you have to take care of yourself. And Social Security, as we know, may or may not be there. So we try to, impress upon people, hey, you're responsible for your own savings programs now. And you need to really take advantage of that through your company plans and IRAs and that sort of thing. So that really changed the dynamics, I believe, is that, doing away with pension plans is really put the onus back on the individuals. And that's where I think we're a lot of help in retirement planning.
I'll also say to your question, John, about the younger generation, a little bit more difficult to work with than the older generation. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that a lot of information's getting thrown their way. And so, when those type of, younger people walk into the door, they're coming with, stuff from podcasts and social media takes on different things and stuff like that. And so they seem to be a lot less trustworthy because of all the information that they're getting fed. And so, we're more translators and act as a filter more than anything, and kind of as reality checkers too, to, let them know, this advice isn't actually accurate, or this is, or so it's a little bit more difficult, I would say, actually working with the younger generation. They're a little more skeptical on average.
Okay. We are going to take our second break, but I'd like to thank Rob and Kevin again for being here. It is Financial Literacy Month, and we're learning a lot already about how important it is. And I love that idea of you got to take care of yourself now, and there aren't pensions anymore, and you need to get help. And that's why financial literacy is so important. So again, you're listening to Biz Talk with Score on WHBY, and we'll be right back after these minutes. Welcome back to Biz Talk with Score. Thank you for joining us this weekend. Before we get back to our show with Robb and Kevin Geenen from the Geenen Group at Baird, I'd like to just mention a couple of courses that you can find online from Score that would be very helpful. I'm going to focus on sales this week, but if you go to score.org/Northeast Wisconsin, you'll see a tab at the top called Workshops and Events. If you go in there, you can find literally thousands of different historical events, but quite a few upcoming ones as well. And there's two that are upcoming that I want to mention around the area of improving your sales capabilities. One is called Mastering Sales for Sustainable Growth, and that's April 21st at 6:30, and there's a $10 charge for that. It's an online course. And the other one I'm going to mention is Sales 101, Increasing Your Sales Skills, Increasing Your Revenue. And that's June 10th at 5 o'clock, and it's no cost. But going out to those Score sites, you can learn an awful lot and start to figure out questions you want to ask, and then use your networks to help fill in some of that and some of the people you work with in investing and and accounting and other places to help you round that out. So that again is score.org/Northeast Wisconsin and workshops and events. So now, as before we get back to Kevin and Rob, I'll just mention once again that this month we are featuring a Financial Literacy Month, and last week we covered a lot of different topics, including fraud, budgeting, managing your personal finances, debt, etc. This week we've got a great show for you where we're talking about investing, which, as we mentioned in the last segment, Kevin and Rob mentioned, is really important for individuals now to have their handle on how they're going to manage it, and getting help from people like Baird where they need it. So we're going to turn back to Rob and Kevin now, and let's start in on some of the education things we've been talking about a little bit. Kevin, can you talk a little bit more about how you guys support client education?
Absolutely, Terry. So we do a lot of live webinars throughout the course of the year. And in fact, just this year, I think we put out about 3 different ones. The first was kind of just generally focused on like a general outlook for 2026, while also including some historical performance data of, why you should stay in the markets. And if this happens, this is what to expect and that kind of thing. Kind of just a generalized webinar for that first one. But the other 2 were a little more focused and in depth on a couple different topics, one of which was charitable giving, which a lot of our clients, because we do have a little bit of an older book of business, a lot of them, are interested in the charitable giving part of things. And we also did one on retirement income strategies too. I think that was the most recent one. So we do a lot of stuff with the webinars, but also we do in-person workshops and client events and things like that. But one of the things I wanted to mention is that Baird also has a huge library full of thousands of articles and videos that are accessible to clients at any given time at their convenience. And so a lot of clients, love that, and they utilize that quite often, actually. So I would say those are the biggest ways that we support the clients, but also The biggest probably would be just the one-on-one meetings we conduct with the clients on, a quarterly or, semi-annual basis, because it's really all about, going over their portfolio, but also, what's happening in the market, what's happening, in the economy, what sectors of the market are doing well, what kind of trends are we seeing, that sort of thing. And so, a lot of education going on in those one-on-one meetings, that we conduct with clients.
Okay. And Rob, we've talked about educating clients and how important that is, but in a constantly changing world we're facing, how does Baird help you educate Baird associates?
Yeah, we have a we have a program in it. It's called Baird University, and again, it's for associates and customers. But every year we're required to do approximately 40 hours of continuing education, and this year's continuing education, I just completed it, focused on how to detect scams, or if your client's being scammed, and financially, and or phishing and that sort of thing. So it's all about what's going on in this computer age and how scamming's working, and what we should be looking at, or if our clients start asking certain questions that might be a red flag, like, hey, they might be getting scammed, especially because we deal with a lot of like super seniors, people that are 75 and above. And that's where scamming really seems to take place, because that's a very trusting generation. And so that almost all this year's continuing education was for our associates was, let's try to protect our clients from these scams that are going on, and ask certain questions, or look for certain red flags in their accounts.
I'm going to build on that a little bit. Experienced this with my parents a few years ago. They were luckily had one of my nephews around and that could help solve the issue before it became a big one. But how do you work with your associates? What do you tell your associates to do if they're fearful that there is a scam going on? How do they manage that?
When we start doing business with somebody, we ask people for a trusted contact. So now it's usually one of your kids, or like a brother or sister, that if we can't get a hold of you, or we might be detecting maybe some cognitive decline in some seniors, is there somebody we can talk to, that, we can tell, we won't discuss the specifics of your account, but we might say, like, hey, your mom came in and she took out 20 grand and she was kind of weird about it, secretive about it. Yeah. You might want to give her a call because we think she might be getting scammed, that sort of thing. So, and again, there's a list of things that we look for. One of them is like withdrawals that usually don't normally happen. Somebody will come in, some lady's taking a couple of grand a month out of her account. All of a sudden she takes 25 grand out, and you say, oh, geez, what are you doing? And she's kind of secretive about it. Well, I saw this thing, and I thought, right away that's a red flag, and we would contact their trusted contact and say, hey, something's up here that you might want to look into.
Okay.
And by the way, it happens a lot more than you'd think.
Yeah.
It happens a lot.
Yeah, by the number of phone calls I see coming through from scam artists, it sure seems like there's a lot of.
Oh yeah.
So, what other type of training does Baird University have for your associates?
Well, every year there's a couple of, one of them's a lot of it's on, what's currently going on with AI and things like that. What to expect, what to look out for, how accurate is this stuff? What should we be thinking? So right now AI has been kind of a big one. The scamming's been another, kind of a big one, but, generally just like trends in the markets, like for instance, a big thing right now is you can take money. Everybody's required at 73 to take an RMD, required minimum distribution. And right now there's a big trend is if you don't need the money, take it out and give it to a charity immediately, and guess what? There's no tax on it then. Just little things like that. And so we're constantly educating our advisors, like how to handle what's going on currently in the markets, and how to react and guide your clients that way.
And Baird also fosters, a bunch of different things like that as far as support for advanced designations like, financial planner or the CPWA, stuff like that, and give bonuses. So they're constantly trying to foster that growth and that education, by giving you some incentives to go ahead and do it.
And your junior employees that come on as associates, et cetera, as they aspire to grow their careers and move up at Baird, are there certain levels of curriculum and classes and things besides independent testing that they have to go through? I mean, does Baird require that as part of your career development as well?
Well, it's not required, but it's kind of a, well, yeah,
Well, we got
yes
the
and no.
FATP
Yeah.
program.
There's programs that you have to go to Milwaukee. If you're going to be at one level, you have to go to Milwaukee for like 3 months, a couple times a week, to get, licensed or whatever. But it's a lot of it to prepare for the test and licensing, but there's also some programs like financial advisor training programs, customer assistant training programs. So yeah, every level's got different training programs they have to attend. It's mandatory.
Sure.
Okay. So we're going to go back to something you just touched on, which is artificial intelligence. I would tell you, as a show that didn't do anything in artificial intelligence a month ago, we now do an incredible amount in artificial intelligence. As a SCORE chapter, 8-9 months ago, we didn't do much. Now we do business planning and a lot of things using artificial intelligence. How is artificial intelligence changing the investment world?
Well, it's definitely helping advisors out in a lot of ways by giving us, the ability to research things a lot faster, stocks and trends and data analysis and that kind of thing. We've also got better forecasting tools through AI too, and that helps us out, quite a bit as well. But, that also comes with a lot of different problems, you know what I mean? Because the AI is not perfect. And so there's still a touch that's needed by humans. And in my opinion, we're actually seeing the rise to kind of a hybrid way of advice, a little bit of AI mixed with, the human interaction. And so, like I said, it's helped us out in many ways, but it's also, created some challenges as far as, looking at like robo-advisors and stuff like that on some of these platforms. I mean, these things are, basically they run on, past performance and historical data, but, they don't take into consideration the emotional side of things. And as you guys know, with the market the last few years, a lot of it, and not just the last few years in the course of history, it's a lot of times emotionally driven. And so the AI just cannot grasp that and pick it up fast enough to be efficient. And so that creates a lot of problems. And there's numerous examples out there of, where AI is really screwed up and cost people a lot of money.
Well, the AI is, so I'll give you an example of what's going on with AI. IBM fired 12,000 programmers in October of last year because of AI. Because AI was doing the programming for them. They hired 9,000 programmers back January this year to fix the AI mistakes. Because, there's a whole bunch of issues there that aren't quite ironed out yet. So even though I think it's a valuable tool and it's going to become more and more valuable, there's a lot of issues there that aren't quite ironed out.
Yeah. Kevin, you're bringing up a good point. You guys mentioned earlier about how it's individual responsibility now. You don't have your company pensions. You don't have to. But now with tools like AI and doing your own online research, et cetera, you can get a lot of information, but it's not necessarily sense checked or vetted out all the time. So I would imagine you use the word a hybrid service. How is an investment group like Baird and your organization positioning that for the next generation of clients to say, we respect the tools and the information that's out there, but it's that personal touch on top of it, helping you guide yourself for now and in your future? Because to me, it's a blend of both, right?
It is. And you know what? I look at it like this. Did you ever try to call an insurance company and get an answer? You get put on hold, dial 5 for this, then you got to hold again. If you call Robb or Kevin Geenen, if you don't get us in right away, you're going to get us within an hour. So, and we'll call you back. So it's the service aspect that, I think that they just can't, these robo-advisor stuff, they just can't copy that human service contact. They just can't.
Right. And by the way, if the market crashes 30%, John, I mean, are you going to feel comfortable, sending your robo-advisor, a personal message asking what's going on, or would you rather talk to a person,
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what it comes down to. I mean, there's still definitely going to be a need for human advisors out there in the future. But I think, you definitely got to mix it with an AI, with a little bit of AI just to kind of stay ahead of the game.
Well, it's coming. It's coming. It's here and it's coming, and it's becoming more and more important. But you're still going to, I think it's a hybrid thing. I think we're going to be working they're not going to be accept us. It's going to be with us. So
how would you guys address like a typical SCORE client we work with. It could be someone who's worked in a corporation and starting out on their own, starting their business out, or in the early years where obviously their focus is on their immediate revenue stream, their immediate expenses, current expenses, but yet they've got to keep investments to many is something I'll deal with later. I'll set aside money later. I don't have it now. How would you address that with the small business community and the importance of investing for long-term security and future and retirement?
I've got a piece, and I'll tell it to you, but it's a piece. And what we did is we did a 401k plan for one of the manufacturing companies in the area recently. It took two guys that stood side by side on machines right next to each other. And the numbers weren't that important, but they were both 25 years old. And one guy put $2,000 away from age 25 to 32. The guy next to him was 25. He didn't start putting any money away until he was 32, and he put $2,000 away from 32 to 62. So one guy only put 7 years of money away, $2,000 a year, $14,000, but he already had that $14,000 in before the other guy put any money in. The guy that put $30,000 in there 30 years of $2,000, $60,000 in there over 30 years, never caught the guy with the $14,000. So the moral of the story is compounding. It's that snowball going downhill. The earlier you put the money in there, the better off you are. So even though it hurts at certain times when you're younger, you don't have the money, the more money you can put away earlier, the more money you're going to have. So the key is, again, do it as early as you can and as much as you can, and in the long run it'll pay off.
Thank you, Warren Buffett. Good advice.
So that actually brings up an interesting idea too. How do you decide the approach you're going to take with a client? So you're coming in, you have your first meeting. What do you think about and talk about in that meeting that lets you decide how you're going to proceed going from there?
Well, in what regard?
So are they somebody, how do you determine their risk profile, what they're willing to take? How do you determine what education they need before you do things, what experts to pull in and that type of thing?
Well, we do a risk analysis profile on almost every client when they first, meet with us or whatever to kind of get a grasp on, how risk averse they might be or how aggressive they can, be in the market. And so that's a big piece to it too.
Like one of the questions might be, one of the questions that, would you feel, if you had a $100,000 portfolio, would you feel comfortable, A, if it was down 10 grand, B, if it was down 20 grand, C, if it was down 30 grand?
And what would you do? Would you hold on?
Right.
Would you panic and sell? Those kinds of, qualifying questions to get an idea of, where somebody's at.
By the way, most people are more conservative than they think they are. They think, well, yeah, I'm a risk taker. Then when they look at that thing, it turns out they're not such a risk taker after all. And by the way, we find that in the Valley, generally speaking. People are, we run a pretty conservative book. Our philosophy is, we're going to get you a decent risk-adjusted return. But again, it's all about the risk, And I always ask somebody, what bothers you more? Not making money when the market's going up, not making as much as your neighbor, he made 15, you only made 10, or not losing any money when it goes down. And they always say the same thing. Losing money hurts more than not making as much as you think you should make.
Do you attribute that to the area we live in, or is that you think it'd be pretty consistent across the country?
No, it's not. And believe it or not, the coast, we have offices on the coast, on the east and west coast, and it seems like the middle land of the country is a fair amount more conservative in their thought process than on the coast. It just seems like it, and I think that some of our studies would back that up, that, especially the west coast seems much more aggressive, in the way they would answer those questions.
So, Rob, as we wrap up this segment, is a question for you. How much fun are you having in your business?
You know what? I'm having more fun now than I ever had. It's fun having your kid with you, because at home he really doesn't have to listen to you. But I'm his boss at work, so he's got to listen to me at work here. There ain't much you can do, So it's a little different dynamic when you're working with your kids, because as we all know, your kids never listen to you at home, but I was shocked. He listens really good at work. He really does. And he follows my example really well. So it's working out really well, really well.
That's because there's something on the line. That's why.
Okay. We are going to take our final break. You've been listening to Biz Talk with Score and WHBY, and we're talking to Robb and Kevin Geenen from the Geenen Group at Baird, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back. We've been talking to Robb and Kevin Geenen from the Geenen Group at Baird. Before we get back to Robb and Kevin, I'd like to thank our sponsors, including Robb and Kevin, for their generous support of Biz Talk. Haling and Associates helps small businesses and individuals not just prepare tax returns, but plan for the future. Haling and Associates, personal connection, positive results. Wherever you are in the life or the life of your business, Johnson Financial Group works to match the banking and wealth services needed to help you complete your mission. Thank you to the Business News for promoting our program in the biweekly business newspaper serving Northeast Wisconsin with the latest business news and topics for our region. We are grateful for the support of Community First Credit Union. At its core, Community First is a community of member owners where people work together to improve their financial well-being and help one another. New North, the Regional Marketing and Economic Development Corporation, is an active supporter of SCORE. The New North facilitates economic growth and helps people in this region live their best lives. Since 1919, Baird has guided families through investment, trust, estate, and tax planning advice. So no matter what the future brings, you can be confident you're ready because your family is Baird's focused. And finally, we'd like to recognize the David L. and Rita E. Nelson Fund within the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region for their generous donation to Biz Talk and SCORE Northeast Wisconsin. Now we'll turn back to Robb and Kevin. Kevin, could you let our listeners know how they can contact your group?
Absolutely. You can give us a call at 920-830-3622. Or if you want, if it's easier for you, more convenient, you can visit our website at geenengroup.bairdwealth.com.
All right. And John, I'm going to turn it back to you to the last question.
Thank you, guys. This has been a wonderfully spirited discussion. And as Terry said, you guys have a real passion for what you do, and the education part of it's big. Just as a final word, with current events always have an impact on people's perception of investments. What do you guys feel are things that you would tell your clients to remember, to keep in mind as they think about their investments in today's world?
We're kind of Warren Buffett guys. We, look for the long term, short. There's always a war going on. There's always something going on. So buy good companies that have good earnings and good potential and hold for a pretty long time. It seems to be the best way to do things, and it's been the best way for 100 some years, and it looks like for the next 100 some years. So that seems to be work the best. Our big thing is there's a lot of information out there nowadays, and I think our biggest help is to help people sort through it, because with the internet and 24 news channels, they're just being bombarded all the time, and I think you get some cases you get oversensitized, like you want to jump at everything that comes on the news. And it makes you want to react, and sometimes it's better not to react so much. So, that my best advice is probably, talk to us and we'll help you sort out that plethora of information that's going on out there these days with the internet and things like that.
Kevin, what's your thought?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a big one. Just try to take the emotions out of investing, like Robb said. I think that's the biggest key, especially with all the stuff going on right now. Like you said, geopolitical events constantly happening. It seems like lately these black swan events have been popping up too lately. But, the biggest thing is just, look at history. And history tells us the best way to go about it is just to stay invested and stay the course. Review your financial plan, make sure, everything's aligned there and just keep moving forward.
Hey, we'd love having you on the show. You've been great guests and really appreciate it. For all our listeners out there, you've been listening to Biz Talk with SCORE and WHBY. We'd like to remind you that you can go to our website at score.org/Northeast Wisconsin and find previous shows, or in about a week, you'll find this episode on your favorite podcatchers everywhere with the podcast, and go out and you can listen to this show again. You can listen to some of the ones that have been out there for a while. There is a great collection of stories about businesses and nonprofits in this region. And as we consistently say, there's some incredible stories here. Go take advantage of them because you will learn an awful lot from what's out there. So once again, thank you everybody, and we hope you have a great weekend. Talk to you next week.